Okay. It's time to share a reading with you and then a message. So it's Matthew 2, the first 12 verses. Visit of the Magi. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them whether Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written." And then we quote from Micah. "But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will be shepherd of my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Yeah. So I could follow what's going on in case I need to reflect anything back. So Christmas really happened was the theme that was chosen a while ago, and today we look at the Magi's faith, and I've deliberately put a question mark, Magi's faith, question mark. Let's explore this briefly this morning. It is only a brief exploration, so I will not be covering everything said in that passage, of course, as you'd appreciate. There were foreigners, there were non-Jews, there were Gentiles, there were Persian dignitaries, modern-day Iran. They may have known something about God, but I'm not sure that they were believers at the start of the journey. Now, there's a lot of theory that these guys could have been related, going back to Daniel and all that sort of stuff. Those who want to study this more deeply, I encourage you to go and do that. But we don't know an awful lot, but we think there may be a connection there. What we do know is that they were into astrology, and their curiosity was aroused when they saw the star. They were scholars, so they knew that it was signifying a significant occasion, like the birth of a king. They had studied these things, so they knew these things. They set out in their caravan. I was talking to Peter only a few days ago, and I was saying to him, one of the reasons why I don't really like singing We Three Kings of Orient Eyes, because I don't like continuing the myth that there were three of them, which is probably why I never choose that, which probably will upset some of you thinking, well, we like that song. But you know, they would have set off in a caravan, traveling 1,000 miles. A caravan is, as you know, a whole company of people, including soldiers, etc. And the whole point of that journey was they were going to see the long-awaited Messiah, the King of the Jews. They were going to worship. So, friends, no planes, no trains, no automobiles, just a long, dangerous, hard journey eastwards. When they get there, they ask questions. But in the process, they manage to stir the interest and the jealousy of Herod, who himself schemingly tries to arrange to find this new king too. We know from later on that his intentions were not good. Now, they had traveled all this way, but they still had to go another short distance, maybe 6 miles or so from where they were to find Jesus. After that long journey, still back into the caravan, back into the bumpy, hard journey to get there. No Uber to jump into or anything like that. It's just tough, grueling, hard stuff, basically. The last leg of the journey. And they found Jesus living in a house. So we know that we're no longer talking about baby Jesus, because he's now living in a house. Verse 11 tells us he's in a house. So we now know that he's around 2 years old. We are that old stage. And these are important little things for us to get story right, that we don't romanticize the whole of Christmas and mess up the story. Especially those who are Bible-believing people, we like to get the story right. So the Christmas story for me is full of twists and is full of surprises, and this is one of them. As Matthew tells the story, God's own chosen people, the Jews, are indifferent to Jesus, to this babe being born, to this new king among them. God's own chosen people, Matthew wants us to know, that's why he's recorded this in the way he has, they are indifferent to this. They didn't seem to care that the Messiah was born right in their midst, but foreigners came all the way from far afield just so that they can worship Jesus. It's interesting, isn't it? The Apostle John in John 1, verse 11, he would summarize this attitude with these words. It's recorded there, John 1:11. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Jesus came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. So what does Matthew want us to learn from the Magi's encounter with the infant Jesus? Well, I think he wants us to learn that the whole trip was made with the intention to worship, because he says it very clearly. The trip was made with the intention to worship. Last week, Stefan asked a question, and it seems to have resonated well with so many of you. I accused him of trying to empty the church and drive everybody away. He says, why are you here at the BBC? In only Stefan's style, inimitable style. Why are you here at the BBC? I said, Stefan, man, I know you're leaving, but don't drive everybody away with you. Come on. Just having some fun, folks. And but he asked a very important question. Why are you here at EBBC? Why here? I hope that as you have thought that through, and maybe some of you are still thinking it through, that whatever your answer to that question, in part, it included the fact that you're here to worship. Whatever your answer to that, in part, you're here to worship. Scripture tells us that the Magi were full of joy. In fact, they were overjoyed, they were ecstatic. Now, how about that for an attitude as we gather in Jesus's presence? How about that? That's pretty good, isn't it? When we come together, we're ecstatic, we are overjoyed. How about that if you are ecstatic and overjoyed right where you are sitting right now? Even if your face may not be telling me that. You're ecstatic, you're overjoyed. Just being in Jesus's presence. Because that's what Matthew wants us to know. Now, admittedly, they had come a long way. They had traveled for nearly a year, etc., etc. But that's their response. And it's interesting, isn't it? If you look at that, that's often the response for many of us when we first become Christians. We are ecstatic and overjoyed. That's our year's journey to get there. But after we've been there for a while, what happens to us? Just asking the question. What happens to the ecstasy? What happens to the overjoy? Where does it go? Why does it go? Why do we allow it to go? How do we bring it back? Just asking some questions in a friendly way, because it's Christmas. So we're being nice to each other. But just asking these questions. So it's a wonderful attitude. They're ecstatic and they're overjoyed. But not only were they ecstatic and overjoyed in that sense, they also had an attitude of surrender as they bow down to worship. They came with that attitude of surrender as they bow down, bowing down, that position, that posture of humility and surrender, recognizing someone who is bigger than you are. And then, as if that's not enough, they gave the best gifts that they could give at the time. Now, the reading that we have, the understanding we have, which Extend so helpfully gave to us earlier on, is a later addition of our understanding. At the time, that's not what the Magi were doing. They just brought the best gifts that they could bring. They weren't bringing things with those specific reasons in mind. I think that's our later understanding. They were just bringing the very best that they had. And they weren't bringing some cheap Nescafe Gold. I mean, what's that all about? They were bringing something which cost them. What did Patrick say? Do you know how expensive a gold bar is? But that's the point. You got to bring the best. I'm just interacting with the drama earlier on. They brought the best that they could offer, even though it was going to cost them an arm and a leg. In fact, I want to say to you, friends, this would have been a very costly journey for them. It would have been very expensive in time, expensive in money, which doesn't seem to be a problem for them because their priority was to come and to meet the one born to be king and to worship him. So nothing was too much as far as they were concerned. Nothing was too much. Absolutely nothing. So let me take a swig and so I can carry on. But let me further apply this passage. I just want to say a little bit more, and I am going to stop because I'm trying to keep it short this morning, and I know you're going to be really impressed. So a little bit more to apply this passage. Jesus, of course, this babe who grew up to be the man, the one who was killed on the cross, and the one who ascended into heaven, and the one who is coming back in the second coming. When he walked the earth and he taught us, he always talked about the cost of being a follower, the cost of being a disciple. He said things like, put me before your family. He said things like, take up your cross daily. Strong things like that. The point is, it will always cost to follow Jesus. Can I say that again to you? In case you didn't hear how I've said it, it will always cost to follow Jesus. Always cost to follow Jesus. Always. Today, as we rapidly come to the end of this service, the cost that we are considering at EBBC is we have to say farewell to two people whom we've come to love so deeply because they follow in Jesus. That's the cost. It would be nice for them to stay. I would love him to stay personally, but that's not an option. The cost is, Jesus says it's time to move on. I don't care how comfortable you are. That's not what I'm about, says Jesus. I'm about the mission of reaching the world. And the cost for us as a church and young people, I hope you are listening, as I know we all are, I hope we all are, is that that's the cost that we pay, the cost of following Jesus. As we say farewell to Stefan and to Chloe, they are responding in obedience to God's call on their lives. It always costs to follow Jesus. Sometimes we get ridiculed because people don't appreciate the values by which we live. Sometimes we are persecuted. I know we don't have strong persecution in this nation as yet in recent times, but nonetheless persecution. Sometimes it's about the appropriate lifestyle that we have to live and be indifferent. There is always a cost. It's about our giving, our financial giving, our tithing and our giving. There's always a cost. There's a cost in time. As we give our time, there's a cost in our using of our gifts and our talents. And I've just been impressed and so glad and grateful to God to see the way in which so many people at EBBC have stepped up and used their gifts and their talents as we've sought to serve God in the changing environment in which we found ourselves over the past year or so. It's been great to see Maggie stepping up at our last church members meeting and saying yes to becoming our prayer ministry coordinator and coordinating together with a team that week of prayer that we've had, which was enjoyed and appreciated so much by us. And I'm looking forward to seeing more and more the fruit of that in our lives together. There is always a cost to following Jesus, always a cost. My final comment is this. I love the way the Magi were obedient to God who spoke to them in a dream. God who speaks in a dream, and they were obedient. So I don't know if there were people of faith at the beginning. I put a question mark, but by the time we get to the end, I am concluding that these are people of faith. Because for me, there's a journey which has been made as they've come face to face with Jesus, as they've come face to face with God, as they've come face to face with the Messiah. A journey has been made. You know, Strictly has only just come to the final last night, and everything is about the journey, the Strictly journey, isn't it? For those of us who watch that kind of stuff. Something happens in the journey, and something happened in their journey, profoundly impacted their lives. They listened to God in a dream. They were people, these Magi, who paid attention, who listened to God. Listen to this. God spoke to them through creation. I know Milad would want me to say this. God spoke to them through creation, the star. Have you thought about that? This is God speaking to them, God drawing them, arousing their curiosity. God who spoke to them through others, because when they got there, they asked questions, and so they asked questions of people, and the people referred to scripture, to Holy Scripture, and they were able to tell them where the babe was to be, Bethlehem in Judah, as they quoted Micah. God who spoke to them there. God who spoke to the face of the baby. They got there with their gifts, and as they gaze upon the babe and the mother, they fall in surrender. God who spoke to them, the very face of the baby, the face of God. God who spoke to them through a dream. However they left home, I want to suggest that they were returning with a faith, a very different people because of their encounter with Jesus. May you, however long you've been a Christian, if you are, or wherever you are on the faith journey, because I don't know all who's listening with us and all who are participating, may you, as you encounter Jesus this day, this year, this Christmas, May you be changed and transformed, and may your face be rekindled, rejuvenated, or maybe even come alive because you've met with Jesus, a living God. Bless you, my friend, and thank you. I think we're gonna